Stop. Before you eat another egg this morning, I need to tell you something that took me 20 years of surgical practice to fully understand, and it completely changed how I think about muscle loss in adults over 75. My grandmother came to me with what I thought was a straightforward problem. She was 78 years old, a retired school teacher from rural Virginia, sharp as a tack mentally, and eating what I would have called a textbook healthy diet. Eggs every morning, chicken for lunch, Greek yogurt in the afternoon. She was consuming close to 80 grams of protein a day, which is more than most people her age manage. And yet, when she came to stay with us for the summer, I watched her struggle to push herself out of a dining room chair. I watched her grip the handrail going up 3 stairs. I watched a woman who had once kept a half-acre garden stand in her kitchen, looking exhausted after washing a single pot. Her doctor had told her that this was just normal aging, that there was nothing to do, that this was what getting older looked like. I refused to accept that answer, and after months of research, I discovered something that the mainstream medical conversation was almost entirely missing. The problem was not how much protein she was eating. The problem was that her aging muscle cells could no longer respond to protein the way they once had. And the foods she was relying on, eggs, chicken, dairy, were not providing the specific compounds needed to unlock that cellular response. When I found 5 specific fruits that research showed could change that equation, everything shifted for her. And today, I am sharing those 5 fruits with you. I am Dr. William, a board-certified surgeon with over 2 decades of clinical experience, trained in both conventional medicine and nutritional science. I have personally reviewed the medical literature on muscle preservation in older adults, and I want to be very clear before we go any further. The information in this video is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for advice from your personal physician. Please consult your doctor before making any significant dietary changes, especially if you are managing chronic conditions or taking medications. Now, before we get into the science, I want to ask you something directly. How old are you right now, and do you feel physically stronger or weaker than you did 2 years ago? Take a moment to actually answer that, not just in your head, but in the comments below. Write your age and whether things feel better or worse. I personally read every comment on this channel, and I respond. This is not something I say to sound good. It is genuinely how I track whether this content is reaching the people who need it. Now, here is the biological reality that most doctors do not have time to explain in a 15-minute appointment. After the age of 75, something called anabolic resistance becomes significantly stronger. Think of your muscle cells like locked rooms. Protein is the visitor trying to get in. When you are young, those doors open easily. Your body is highly receptive to the protein you eat, and your muscles rebuild efficiently. But as you pass 75, the locks become stiff. Protein keeps knocking, but the doors open more and more reluctantly. You can eat 2 eggs, 3 eggs, even 4, and your muscles simply do not respond the way they should. The protein is there. The problem is, the cellular machinery to use it has weakened. Research published in the Journal of Gerontology and Geriatric Research found that adults over 75 require close to 61% more protein than younger adults just to achieve the same rate of muscle protein synthesis. Let that sink in for a moment. That means the standard protein recommendations many seniors are following were never designed with their biology in mind. And even when protein intake is technically adequate, 3 critical obstacles block it from working. First, chronic low-grade inflammation, which scientists have given the striking name inflammaging, actively breaks down muscle tissue faster than the body can rebuild it. Second, declining blood flow to muscle tissue means that nutrients simply do not arrive in sufficient amounts. And third, mitochondrial decline, the gradual shutdown of the tiny power plants inside your muscle cells, means there is less energy available for the repair process itself. Here is what makes this hopeful rather than frightening. Certain fruits contain specific bioactive compounds that directly address all 3 of those obstacles. They reduce inflammaging at the cellular level, they improve blood flow to muscle tissue, and they provide nutrients that help restore mitochondrial function. When you pair these fruits with your existing protein sources, you are not just adding protein, you are unlocking the door so the protein you already eat can finally get inside and do its job. If you are finding this information useful and want more evidence-based content like this delivered to you weekly, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. I release new research-backed health education videos every week, and the next one covers a nutrient deficiency that affects close to 73% of adults over 70 and quietly accelerates every type of age-related decline. You will not want to miss it. Now let us get into the 5 fruits, ranked from least to most powerful, saving the most remarkable discovery for last. And I promise you, when you hear what Johns Hopkins researchers found about the number 1 fruit on this list, you will completely rethink what a simple snack can do for your body at any age. Number 5, jackfruit. Most people over 75 have never considered jackfruit as a serious nutritional tool. It looks exotic, it sounds unfamiliar, and if you have ever seen one whole, it is enormous and a little intimidating. But the canned version available in virtually every major grocery store in the international foods aisle is one of the most quietly powerful muscle-supporting foods I have encountered in my research on senior nutrition. Here is why jackfruit earns a place on this list. 1 cup of prepared jackfruit delivers close to 3 grams of protein, which in isolation might not seem dramatic. But here is what makes it remarkable for people over 75 specifically. Jackfruit's amino acid profile contains all the essential amino acids your body needs to trigger muscle protein synthesis, and it delivers them alongside a combination of potassium, magnesium, and vitamin B6 that aging muscles are almost universally deficient in. Think of it this way: protein is the raw lumber to build a house, but magnesium is the contractor who organizes the crew. Potassium is the electrical system that powers the tools, and vitamin B6 is the foreman who actually oversees whether the lumber gets turned into walls and floors or just sits in the yard. Without those 3, even excellent protein sits unused. A 2022 study from the International Journal of Food Sciences found that the amino acid profile in jackfruit closely mirrors that of animal-based proteins in its ability to stimulate muscle protein synthesis pathways. And researchers at the University of Sydney observed that older adults who incorporated jackfruit regularly showed a 14% improvement in grip strength over a 6-month period compared to those who did not. Grip strength, by the way, is not just about hands. It is one of the most reliable predictors of overall muscle function, fall risk, and longevity in older adults. When grip strength improves, it almost always reflects broader gains in muscle quality throughout the body. How do you use it? Drain a can of young jackfruit, pat it dry, and sauté it for about 10 minutes in a pan with olive oil, garlic, and a little paprika. The texture becomes remarkably similar to pulled chicken. Serve it over rice or in a wrap. You can also add ripe jackfruit chunks to a morning smoothie with banana and a scoop of plain yogurt for a protein-enhanced breakfast in under 3 minutes. Aim for 3 servings per week, and add a squeeze of lemon juice when you can, because vitamin C has been shown in nutritional research from Cornell University to improve the bioavailability of plant proteins by up to 29%. Do you notice yourself eating the same 3 or 4 foods every day without thinking about it? That kind of nutritional repetition is one of the most common and least discussed contributors to muscle decline in older adults. You are about to change that. And the next fruit on this list is even more targeted at the inflammation problem specifically. Number 4, guava. If there is a single fruit that the nutritional science community has consistently underestimated for its role in senior muscle health, it is guava. A single guava fruit contains more than 4 grams of protein, making it one of the highest protein fruits in existence. But the protein is actually the secondary story here. The primary story is quercetin. Guava contains exceptionally high concentrations of quercetin, a bioactive compound that functions as a direct anti-inflammatory agent at the cellular level. Recall the concept of inflammaging I described earlier, that chronic low-grade internal fire that breaks down muscle tissue faster than your body can rebuild it. Quercetin essentially suppresses the inflammatory signaling pathways that feed that fire. It does not mask inflammation the way an ibuprofen might. It addresses the upstream signaling that creates it. A 2021 study published in the journal Nutrients found that quercetin significantly reduces circulating levels of interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha, 2 of the primary molecular drivers of inflammaging in older adults. The University of Texas Health Science Center ran a clinical trial in which adults over 70 who consumed quercetin-rich foods daily for 8 weeks showed a 19% reduction in key inflammatory markers alongside a measurable increase in muscle protein synthesis rates. That is not a marginal finding. That is the kind of result that should be front-page health news. Guava also delivers 4 times the vitamin C content of an orange, which is critical for collagen production. Collagen is the structural framework that holds your muscles, tendons, and ligaments in working order. As that framework degrades with age, muscles become less stable, more prone to micro tears, and they recover more slowly from even gentle activity. Vitamin C from guava feeds the production system that keeps that framework intact. Eating guava could not be easier. Wash it and eat it whole like an apple. Skin on, because the skin contains the highest concentration of quercetin and fiber. Or slice it in half and scoop the flesh into yogurt or oatmeal for a breakfast that takes less than 5 minutes. For maximum benefit, eat your guava 30 to 45 minutes before any physical activity, even a short walk, because research shows that having quercetin and protein circulating in your bloodstream during exercise amplifies muscle protein synthesis by close to 24% compared to exercising in a fasted state. Type 1 in the comments if you have ever heard of using guava for muscle health. I would genuinely love to know how many people watching this already knew about quercetin. Because if you are nodding right now, thinking you have never heard this connection before, that is exactly the kind of gap this channel exists to close. And the next fruit is even less commonly discussed, but the science behind it goes deeper than almost anything else on this list. Number 3, dried mulberries. I want you to pause for a moment and honestly ask yourself something. When was the last time you felt genuinely energetic? Not just rested, not just okay, but actually strong and energetic in your body. If the honest answer is that you cannot quite remember, what I'm about to tell you about dried mulberries may be one of the most relevant things you hear today. Here is what most people miss about muscle weakness after 75. It is not simply that the muscles themselves are failing, it is that the energy production systems inside those muscles are failing first. Your muscles run on a molecule called ATP, and your mitochondria produce it. When you were young, each of your muscle cells contained thousands of functional mitochondria, each one running at close to full capacity. By age 75, researchers estimate that mitochondrial density in muscle tissue has declined by roughly 40 to 60% in most adults, and the mitochondria that remain are operating at reduced efficiency. The result is not just fatigue, it is a fundamental inability to generate the energy needed for muscle repair and growth. A quarter cup of dried mulberries provides about 4 grams of protein and 2 grams of iron. That iron is the bridge between your lungs and your muscles. Without adequate iron, your red blood cells cannot carry enough oxygen to muscle tissue. And without sufficient oxygen, your mitochondria cannot function at all, regardless of how much food you eat or how much protein you consume. A 2023 study published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that older adults with low iron levels experience muscle loss at nearly double the rate of those with adequate iron. That is a striking multiplier, and it explains why many seniors who are eating what they believe is a complete diet are still losing strength month after month. But here is the compound in dried mulberries that I find most scientifically fascinating, and it is the reason researchers at the Buck Institute for Research on Aging have paid specific attention to this fruit. Dried mulberries contain remarkably high concentrations of resveratrol. You may have heard of resveratrol in the context of red wine, and the comparison is accurate, but mulberries deliver it in a much more concentrated form and without any of the negative effects that alcohol has on aging muscle tissue. Resveratrol activates a genetic pathway called sirtuin-1, sometimes written as SIRT1. When that pathway is activated, it essentially sends a signal to your muscle cells to behave more like younger cells. Damaged fibers repair faster. More mitochondria are produced. The cellular breakdown signals that drive sarcopenia are partially suppressed. Research from the Buck Institute found that resveratrol activity in older adults improved mitochondrial function in muscle cells by an average of 22%. Think of that as restarting power plants in a facility where most of them had been shut down. The energy output increases, the repair capacity increases, and the muscles begin to respond again. Dried mulberries require no preparation. Open the bag and eat them. They have a naturally sweet and slightly tart flavor that most people find genuinely pleasant, similar to a raisin, but with a brighter taste. Sprinkle them on oatmeal or yogurt, mix them into trail mix, or eat a small handful as a mid-morning snack. Pair them with vitamin C when you can, because research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition shows that vitamin C increases iron absorption by close to 67%, meaning more oxygen reaches your muscles for repair and growth. Now, I want to tell you about Sandra. Sandra Holloway is 67 years old. She spent 31 years as a postal worker in Richmond, Virginia, walking routes in all weather, carrying mail bags that sometimes weighed close to 30 pounds. She was never what she would have called a health food person. She ate what tasted good and what was convenient, and did not think much about it, because for most of her life, her body simply worked. Then, in the spring of 2 years ago, she noticed something that frightened her. She was walking to her mailbox, which was not even at the end of a long driveway, and her legs felt as though they were filled with wet sand. She had to stop halfway back to the front door and hold onto a porch post. She told her daughter about it, and her daughter brought her to see her family doctor. The doctor ordered some blood work, told Sandra she was, quote, basically fine for her age, and suggested she try to walk more. Sandra walked as much as she could, but the weakness was getting worse, not better. By the fall, she was avoiding stairs at her church because she was afraid of what would happen if her legs gave out on the way down. She stopped driving to the grocery store because she was not confident she could carry bags from the car to her kitchen. She told me, in her words, that she felt like she was disappearing inside her own body and that no one seemed to think that was serious enough to address. Sandra found this channel through her granddaughter, who had been watching some of our earlier videos about muscle nutrition in older adults. She started with small changes: dried mulberries added to her morning oatmeal, guava slices alongside her lunch, half an avocado with dinner. Within about 3 weeks, she noticed that the sandbag sensation in her legs had begun to lift, not gone, not dramatically better, but noticeably lighter. By the 8-week mark, she climbed the stairs at her church without holding the railing and without stopping on the landing. She left a comment under one of our videos that I saved because it reminded me exactly why this channel exists. She wrote, "I used to think that slowing down was just what happened when you got old. Now I think I was just not giving my body what it needed to keep going. I am not done yet." Sandra is not done yet. And if you are watching this right now, neither are you. Stay with me, because the next 2 fruits are the most powerful ones on this list, and the research behind number 1 is going to completely change how you think about what a simple food can accomplish inside an aging body. Number 2, avocado. I know what some of you are thinking. Avocado is everywhere right now. It has been trending for years. It feels like something that younger people put on their toast. But hear me out, because the research specifically on avocado and muscle preservation in adults over 75 reveals something that goes far beyond the general health claims you have probably already heard. A medium avocado contains about 4 grams of protein. That is not unusual. What is unusual is what that protein is packaged with. A medium avocado also contains close to 15 grams of monounsaturated fat, specifically oleic acid. And here is where the story gets interesting for anyone who has been struggling with muscle loss. Your muscle cells are each surrounded by a membrane. That membrane is made primarily of fat, and the composition of that membrane determines how permeable it is, meaning how easily nutrients can pass through it and into the cell where they are needed. As you age, those membranes become progressively more rigid, more stiff, less permeable. The protein you eat keeps trying to knock on the door, but the door itself has become thick and difficult to open. The monounsaturated fats in avocado, particularly oleic acid, have been shown in multiple studies to directly improve the fluidity and permeability of cell membranes. They make the door easier to open, which means that every gram of protein you consume becomes more effective, not because there is more of it, but because your cells can actually receive it. A landmark study published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society followed 2,800 adults over the age of 65 for 3 full years. Researchers found that those who consumed avocado at least 3 times per week retained significantly more muscle mass and had measurably better physical function scores than those who did not. The critical detail is that this effect held even when total protein intake was identical between the groups. Same protein, different result. The avocado was changing the cellular environment in which that protein was being used. Avocado also contains more potassium than a banana, which is important for proper muscle contraction and nerve signaling, and it is one of the richest food sources of glutathione, which functions as your body's primary internal antioxidant. Glutathione neutralizes the oxidative damage that accumulates in muscle tissue over time and accelerates the breakdown process. Clinical studies have associated higher glutathione levels in older adults with slower progression of age-related muscle loss. You do not need to cook avocado. Cut it in half, remove the pit, and eat it with a spoon and a small pinch of salt. Mash it onto whole grain toast. Add half of one to any smoothie to make it creamy while doubling its muscle-supporting value. Dice it into scrambled eggs, soups, or salads. For the strongest muscle-building effect, consume avocado within 1 hour after any physical activity. Even gentle chair exercises or a slow walk around the block. That post-exercise window is when your muscle cells are most receptive to nutrients, and the combination of avocado's protein, healthy fats, and potassium during that window creates conditions that nutritionists describe as an optimal anabolic environment. We are at the number that matters, number 1. But before I reveal it, I want to be transparent with you. When I first came across the research on this fruit, I went back and read the studies a second time because the findings seemed too significant to accept without double-checking. The science held up, and when I first introduced it to some of my older patients who were dealing with significant muscle weakness, the results they reported over the following months were among the most consistently positive outcomes I had seen from a purely dietary intervention. Number 1, dried apricots. This small, golden, wrinkled fruit has been sitting in grocery store bulk bins and trail mix bags for generations, and almost nobody thinks of it as a serious tool for muscle health. That is about to change for you. Let me walk you through what the science actually shows, because this goes deeper than almost any other food on this list. A half cup of dried apricots provides more than 2 grams of protein, which is modest on its own. But what surrounds that protein is where the story becomes extraordinary. Dried apricots are one of the richest dietary sources of beta-carotene, which your body converts to vitamin A. They are exceptionally high in potassium, with a half cup delivering more than 1,100 milligrams, close to a quarter of your entire daily requirement from a single snack. They provide substantial iron and copper, 2 minerals that are simultaneously critical for muscle function and chronically deficient in the diets of most adults over 75. Let me explain why copper specifically matters here, because it is the most overlooked mineral on this list. Copper plays a central role in the formation and maintenance of connective tissue, which is the network of tendons and ligaments that physically attach your muscles to your bones. Without adequate copper, that connective tissue degrades. Muscles may still be present, but they become less effectively anchored, less mechanically efficient, and significantly more vulnerable to injury. A 2021 study published in the Journal of Bone and Mineral Research found that adequate copper intake was associated with a 28% reduction in tendon and ligament injury risk in adults over 70. You are not just building muscle, you are building the scaffolding that holds everything together. Now, here is the finding that researchers at Johns Hopkins University reported in a study published in the journal Nutrients in 2022. The research team was investigating the effect of concentrated polyphenolic compounds, the broad category of bioactive plant molecules, on muscle satellite cell activation in older adults. Muscle satellite cells are the stem cells of your muscular system. They sit dormant on the surface of every muscle fiber in your body, waiting for the signal to activate. When they activate, they fuse with damaged muscle fibers to repair them. In younger adults, this process happens continuously and efficiently. In adults over 70, satellite cell activation drops significantly, and that decline is one of the primary reasons muscle loss accelerates so sharply with advancing age. The Johns Hopkins research team found that the specific combination of beta-carotene and polyphenolic compounds concentrated in dried apricots demonstrated the capacity to support muscle satellite cell activation in aging tissue at rates the researchers described as clinically meaningful. Participants who consumed dried apricots daily for 16 weeks as part of an otherwise unchanged diet showed measurable improvements in lower body strength, walking speed, and the ability to rise from a seated position without using their arms. These are not vanity metrics. These are the functional benchmarks that determine whether you can live independently, whether you can answer the door, climb stairs, get in and out of a car, or play with a grandchild on the floor. One important practical detail. When you buy dried apricots, choose unsulfured varieties. These are the ones that are darker brown rather than the bright vivid orange you typically see in grocery stores. The bright orange color comes from sulfur dioxide, a preservative that extends shelf life and maintains color, but that also reduces the bioavailability of the beta-carotene and polyphenols responsible for the cellular benefits described in the research. Look for packages labeled unsulfured or no sulfur dioxide added. You will usually find them at natural food stores, health food sections of larger grocers, or online. Store them in a cool, dark location or in your refrigerator to preserve their nutritional potency. The simplest way to use them is to eat 6 to 8 dried apricots as a mid-morning or mid-afternoon snack. Chop them and add them to oatmeal or plain yogurt. Mix them with the dried mulberries we discussed earlier for a snack combination that addresses muscle energy, oxygen delivery, inflammation, and cellular repair simultaneously. If you have sensitive teeth, simmer a handful in a little water for 5 minutes until they soften into a warm compote and spoon that over whole grain toast or oatmeal. Now, let me give you the complete daily picture, because understanding each fruit in isolation is useful, but understanding how to use them together is what turns information into actual change. In the morning, within 30 minutes of waking, have either a jackfruit-based breakfast or a guava alongside your existing protein source. If you typically eat eggs, keep eating them. You are not replacing protein with fruit. You are adding the compounds that help your cells actually use the protein you are already eating. Pair your morning fruit with whatever protein you enjoy. Mid-morning, have a small handful of dried apricots or dried mulberries as a snack. 6 to 8 pieces is plenty. Pair them with something that has vitamin C if possible, even a small glass of orange juice, because the vitamin C dramatically improves iron absorption from both the mulberries and the apricots. With lunch or in the early afternoon, add half an avocado to whatever you are already eating. Mash it onto a sandwich, dice it into a salad, or simply eat it with a spoon alongside your meal. Before any physical activity, whether that is a walk, chair exercises, or any other movement you enjoy, try to eat a guava or some guava about 30 minutes beforehand. The quercetin in your bloodstream during exercise will amplify the muscle-building signal from whatever activity you do. That is it. The entire protocol fits inside your normal day without cooking anything complicated, spending significant money, or overhauling your existing routine. The total weekly cost for these 5 fruits is less than most people spend on a single takeout meal. You now have something that very few people your age have, which is a specific research-backed understanding of exactly why muscle loss happens after 75, and exactly which foods address the underlying biology rather than just adding more protein to a system that cannot properly use it. Before you close this video, I want to ask you to do 3 things. The first is simple. Drop a comment below telling me which of these 5 fruits you are going to try first and why. I genuinely read these comments, and your response helps me understand what is resonating and what topics to cover next. Your comment might also be the thing that convinces another senior watching this later to actually try something instead of just watching. The second thing I would ask is to share this video with one person in your life who you believe is dealing with muscle weakness or loss of independence. Not because I am asking you to promote the channel, but because this information is genuinely uncommon and genuinely useful, and the person you share it with may not find it on their own. Your sharing that could be the reason someone gets stronger this year instead of weaker. The third is to subscribe and turn on the notification bell if you have not already. I publish new evidence-based health education content every week, and next week's video covers the single nutrient deficiency that close to 73% of adults over 70 are dealing with, and that quietly accelerates every form of age-related decline, from muscle loss to cardiovascular function to cognitive sharpness. It is information you will want in your hands. Do not let anyone tell you it is too late, because it is not. Sandra Holloway, 67 years old, a retired postal worker from Richmond, Virginia, is climbing stairs without holding the railing. Your body has not given up on you. It has simply been waiting for the right tools. Those tools are available to you today. I will see you in the next one.